Hey, everybody. It is the top of the month. Oh my God. It is March, y'all. It is March, and we are back. C3, the Corporate Consciousness Co op, is back in the building.
The
Karen,
mouthful of C's.
I know, right? All kind of C's. So you notice I did that kind of slow so I wouldn't trip myself up. Uh, but Karen, what is going on?
Hi, Lawrence. Happy March.
Happy March. And so we have another great topic that was given to us from the C3 community. And again, just so you all know, Karen, she's going to tell you what the C3 community is, but thank you all. Tell us where you're watching from, listening from, and all those good things while Karen gives the official C3 live opening.
So welcome to the March Answer the Call to Conscious Leadership event. It's hard to believe, but in a few months, we'll be coming up on a year of these, which is really fun and interesting to think about, all the things that happened in that year, especially. It was born out of an idea that there's a whole bunch of awesome, amazing conscious change leaders out there making ripples to create greater conscious change in the corporate landscape. And if we can put our ripples together, we can accelerate this momentum and knowledge share and elevate and illuminate these practices that people are out there doing that have been proven to be effective in creating the change that we want in the corporate landscape, a more conscious corporate landscape. So thank you for coming here. I hope you participate. I hope you ask great questions. We have Vince Blando here today. I've known Vince since I was 16, which is even harder to believe. I met Vince when I worked in the mall. He was a mall security guard, and while he is large in stature, I've gotten to know that he is really one of the most boldly vulnerable people that I know. So he's here to talk about vulnerability and leadership. He is a leader in HR, and he's in transition. So if you know of any human resources opportunities, senior resources opportunities for Vince, I'm sure, and you align with what he tells you about who he is as a leader, then please hit him up and hire him and bring him in. I got to tell you that, Vince, I mean, I've known you to be not just somebody who demonstrates vulnerability, but you are a champion of vulnerability. You are a defender of vulnerability. Tell us about your experience of vulnerability and leadership and a little bit about your background.
Sure. So it's funny. I've learned the hard way about the value of being a vulnerable leader and being a conscious leader. And I've been lucky in that I've had some mentors in my career where I've learned primarily a way to be a great leader and how to lead by example and to be an open, you hear so many people talk about how they have an open door for their folks, for their teams, for the organizations that they service. But it's not always truly the case. And I was lucky at a previous stop where I had the greatest possible mentor and boss that you can imagine. And the effect that had on me, both as a performer and as a growing leader, was profound. My background is a very interesting one. If you were to go back in time with me through my career, as Karen can attest, I've done it all, and not necessarily in a good way. I started. Karen and I were at Ursinus together, and at that time, my career aspirations were history teacher and basketball coach. So here I am as a senior HR manager I am doing one of those things because my son was playing basketball. So I was able to coach him and his friends and had a lot of fun with that, which we're actually, if you want to talk about being a true vulnerable leader, coach kids. And it's such a rewarding experience. I left Ursinus. I got mononucleosis at the beginning of my senior year. And if anybody is as old as I am and remembers what the student loan rules were back then, you had to borrow. You were not allowed to borrow a fifth year without a cosigner. I did not have a cosigner, so I went to work. I worked at a juvenile detention home for 3 years, trying to make a difference in the world. I managed insurance agencies. I worked for a religious organization as an outsider that was not a member of that affiliation, but I had a great 3 years. I learned a ton. I left college as somebody who did not know what they were supposed to be doing with their lives. And I was lucky finally to be steered into an opportunity at a large company where I was able to get exposed to a lot of different things. And I had people, say to me, "Hey, Vince, look, you seem to be like a jack of all trades, but we think you'd be really good in HR and benefits." And my career, I went from having jobs to having a career. So I was finally at a place for longer than 3 or 4 years. And what happens there is you really can see the evolution of leadership and see it in practice. And I was able to move up through the ranks at Saint-Gobain by wrapping my arms around everything I could, but also by showing myself to be somebody that was approachable, helpful, and somebody that you could go to with stuff that you needed done and stuff that you were struggling with. And that last piece, I don't think you can really do without yourself being vulnerable and open to what comes with it. And it served me very well. And I was, I was telling the hosts that, I am in a point of transition now because not every organization is necessarily open to vulnerable and conscious leadership. So I'm hoping to talk a little bit about that as we move forward. But that is my background. I've been in HR now for, if you include benefits, 14 years, which does make me feel ancient. But I still have a lot of gas in the tank. So that is, I'm looking to stay in the field because it's something that speaks to me, and I see the value in not just ROI that you can bring to an organization, but the way you can impact people.
And I'm so excited. And I tell you, talk about authentic leadership. Blame it on my head, not my heart. Nick Dillon, my buddy, my friend, had given me what I should have sent him earlier, long time ago. But I told you, I'm authentic out in these streets. Also humble, open, and transparent. But Nick Dillon is somebody who, when it's time to talk authenticity, time to talk leadership, time to talk education, time to talk everything under the sun that has to do with developing people. Nick is somebody who I pull in. Also, my brother from another, the big homie, all the names that I have for him. I'm so grateful that he's able to come having what does it look like to be vulnerable, leading with vulnerability. He is somebody I was like, Nick. That's who I gotta have having this conversation with me. What is going on, sir?
Welcome, Nick.
Thank you all for having me. This is a great topic. Great topic. Doesn't get a lot of traction, but definitely a great topic to talk about. I'm well. I'm doing good.
So how, Nick, just to kind of get everybody in Vince throughout there, what led him to exercising vulnerability and being it being an action topic, not just something aspirational. How have you led with vulnerability in your practice and all the things you do, Nick?
Great question, Lawrence. I think vulnerability comes in when, and I will preface it in saying that when it comes to anything in professionalism, and even I call what we do the helping profession. So as an educator, a coach, a therapist, mentor, facilitator, you have to really be comfortable with you. And in order for you to really show up your highest and best self, and your highest and best self essentially allows you to be vulnerable. If you're struggling with, self-image, self-esteem, comfort level, nervous, even anxiety and things of that nature, then vulnerability feels like anxiety. And we don't like anxiety from a professional standpoint. And so in order for you to really show up like that, you have to really be willing to work on those things. And so for me, it's been a journey, because 35 years ago, I would have told y'all, this won't work for me. But I've done a lot of work in just being comfortable in who I am, And that has really, really worked with, and then, slowly kind of exposing myself to different environments, different situations. To be honest, I got rid of my vulnerability in church with church speeches as a youngster. And then growing up from there, just being around gatherings and social groups and things of that nature. So when I got to college and doing speeches and things of that nature, and certainly in the corporate arena, I didn't really have an issue with vulnerability because I was good with me. But for some people, it takes a journey to get there, and it's not for the faint of heart. But you got to be willing to be vulnerable, because vulnerability allows your group or your audience to see that you're human. And be able to embrace that humanity side of you, that compassion side of you, that empathy side of you, and also that, that hurt, that emotional side of you. From a gender standpoint, we're socialized into not displaying that.
I love what you just said about, you dropped a whole bunch of bombs in there. Let's go to the first one, wisdom bombs, I'll say, not the bad kind. But the first one that you were talking about was that if you're not comfortable with yourself, if you're struggling with your self-image and your self-consciousness, that vulnerability can feel like anxiety. I really want to make sure that gets repeated, because that was so worth saying. And yet at the same time, I can say that there were times in my life, mostly when I was younger, before I did a lot of work on myself, but even more recently in 2018, after a long-term sickness and then falling into depression, I was too fragile to put myself out there for anything, and it is a journey to get yourself back in there, to expose yourself. And I couldn't share my pain during that time. I needed somebody to be like, hey, I have pain too. It's okay that we feel this pain together. Or if it's okay if your pain is your pain and my pain is my pain, we're okay that we have this pain, which also brings up another topic that seems to come up every single time that we do this. Well, two recurring themes is self-awareness, right? And the other one is psychological safety. So you were able to build your confidence in that church environment where you felt safe exposing yourself, because these people you knew would love you unconditional and see you as a child of God. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I.
You good? That's it.
That's what I envision. So Vince, let's talk about knowing that let's talk about the juvenile home. You must have been exposed to so much pain with those boys. And that had to have been so transformative.
I had a feeling you were going to throw this to me at this point.
I did kind of
for
warn
a couple
you.
of reasons. And Nick, I want to commend you for basically outlining my life in about 4 sentences, at least my early adult life. I grew up in Overbrook, West Philly. I'm a first generation American. My father's from just outside Naples, Italy, and growing up was hard. And I carried a lot of stuff into college, as Karen can attest. I carried a lot of stuff into my early career and even my mid-career, where I had a lot of that self-doubt that, where I was able to show strength outwardly, but people that were close to me knew I was holding back. I wasn't being my full true self, and it was affecting my ability to lead. And, I would say that, so I got into a fight with a professor, not a fist fight, but I got into an argument with a professor that went over about 5 different class sessions at St. Joe's, where we talked about trait, versus, nurture, leadership, and how one becomes a leader. And I don't know that necessarily people are born leaders. I still would say that we are mostly taught versus, inbred with that ability. But I've always kind of had a natural predilection to being the captain of the team, the person that people went to for problems when they were struggling. As I turned into a young adult, that still was there, but I lacked the confidence in my validity, in my worth to really, be as much of a benefit to folks as I could have been. Going back to when I left college and I went to work, Karen, you were asking about my time at the juvenile detention home. It was it was eye-opening because it brought me back to a lot of stuff that I experienced and that my immediate family was going through. And I thought that I could make a difference, and I believe I did in small doses, you know. But what you talk about the pain that you're experiencing, you know, the I've been lucky in my past that I've been exposed to lots of different types of communities and been a part of them, even though I didn't necessarily share the experience. I try to be empathetic, and I was in that environment where I allowed myself to be kind of a vulnerable go-to and somebody that was open to those guys, because it was an all boys detention home. It served me well and was good in some areas, but in some areas it was seen as weakness. And where, you know, you thought you were getting through to a kid or to a coworker that was struggling with something, you know, it was seen as being soft in an environment where, you know, it's not a jail environment necessarily. It's not a prison environment, but a lot of the mindset, you know, these are people that are being kept from their families. These are people that are being kept from their neighborhoods and their homes and their friends. So there is an antipathy there. And I struggled with it because I was thinking I was being this great resource of you know, leadership and showing them a better way to carry themselves. And I probably had a success rate, you know, not that you can grade these things, of probably 15%, because a lot of these guys ended up back there or back in a worse place. So it really was a blow to me. But, you know, at the time I'm in my early 20s thinking, wow, you know, what am I supposed to be doing with myself, and why can't I help anybody else while I'm in this position? So it was eye-opening. It was a great learning experience, and I know for a fact I couldn't do it again.
Yeah, I love what you said there, Vince, particularly around and I felt you heading in the direction of empathy. I felt you steering direction there, because when you talk about leading with vulnerability, I mean, you talk about something that to some people's ears that sounds like a cuss word when you talk about being vulnerable. But one of my newly favorite found authors, and you talk about who keeps coming up all the time, Karen, in this space, is, you know, some Brene Browns and some, you know, gifts and imperfections, and as leaders, and I'm with you now, gaining reps and building muscles around the practice of leadership and professionalizing it as an actual skill set is something that is not innate. Like you described, like you're always predispositioned to say, you know what, I'm here, I'll lead. Hey, follow me, right? It's the whole infantry thing that I got led with. Follow me, when in charge, take charge kind of thing. But to develop the muscle, particularly as it pertains to vulnerability, has something that I believe we all need some upskilling in, or it will come off as, and I've seen it over this past year and some change with all the things that have been happening in the world, is coming off as sympathy more than empathy. And allowing, and I love what you said, and Nick, you alluded to it as well, is, hey, allow your thing to be your thing, but the humility of, I can be confident, and allow you to be confident as well as you build this capacity. And I think the moment that we as leaders take that approach to allow somebody's stuff to be their stuff, but us get more curious than the whole comparison trap of trying to be dismissive of someone's pain, is another thing that I've seen, in particularly around leading and vulnerability. Like, it wasn't that bad. It didn't hurt you that much. Like, really? Like, is that what we're doing? And so, Nick, I know you do work at the student college level and different things like that. Like, where are you finding kind of the gap in building vulnerability in leaders?
Great question, Lawrence. I think for me, the gap is is the whole emotional intelligence piece. I think where you see the gap is not only self-managing, but I think we encourage self-managing and emotional intelligence sometimes to a fault, by encouraging, you know, some leaders, and I like how Vince put it, some leaders, depending on your corporate environment. And I'll use the example of when I first started in therapy, and I was doing my clinical hours, and I was seeing children, and I was working with young folks, and I'll never forget. I had been doing it for several months, and when you're working with children in therapy, sometimes you deal with trauma. And I started dealing with a whole lot of trauma things. And so what I asked one of the psychiatrists, I said, you know, some of this work and some of these experiences are very deep. And and I'm finding myself even in these scenarios sort of resonating with them. And it's bringing up some stuff for me that's somewhat emotional for me. Is it okay to weep with them? Is it okay to, you know, you know, it might be so bad. Is it okay to cry with them? We both get a tissue and, just get through the process and still support them. And I remember the psychiatrist saying, no, your job is not to go there. Your job is to not empathize at that level. And as I further got into this work, I ended up meeting another psychiatrist that said, no, that's completely not the right way. You are okay to be open and vulnerable with them and share with them that what they just told you reached your heart. And it's okay to show that you have a heart of humility. So in leadership, I say that to say this: in leadership, it's okay to have a heart of humility. It's okay to have a heart of compassion and empathy and things of that nature. And it doesn't make you any less of a leader, because you're doing those things with a strategy. You're doing those things to build relationships. You're doing those things to get them through the motivational interviewing process to share, to be open, to be honest, because we're looking, especially in this age of inclusiveness and equity, we're looking for people to be vulnerable to us. Well, that means, to your point, Karen, we got to create that safe space. I got to create that psychology safety space so that you feel that it's okay for me to share with you. Why? Because I'm willing to be vulnerable with you as well. And I'm willing to create that space so that we can do that collaboratively. I can be effective as a leader, build better relationships. And when you come to work, people don't realize this, but when you come to work and you show up knowing that I got a leader that understands, that cares, that values me, that wants the best of me, and I can see that in them in every conversation we have, that allows you the utmost ability to show up your highest and best self. That allows you the utmost ability to be able to say, wow, no, if I got something going on, if I got anything going on, and you all know this in corporate America, even in the leadership roles that we've had, you've had to be that counselor. You've had to be that therapist. You had to be that listener. You had to be that coach. You had to be that mentor. The only way you can be effective in those roles is the person you're talking to sees in you that you care, that you are vulnerable, that you too are human, that you are compassionate, that you are loving and caring. Yes, we can use that word in the workplace. It's not a taboo.
We need that, don't we? I mean, we need that as not just as leaders, but as people that are being led. To know that the person above you doesn't just see you as a statistic or a worker bee. That you're a person that has feelings and needs. And you're right, in the corporate environment, sometimes that can be seen as showing weakness. But I will tell you that as a performer, not necessarily as a leader, as a performer in my career, I've had my best success when I worked for people that were approachable, that I could talk to, that I didn't have to feel badly about bothering them, to bounce stuff off of them, because they made themselves vulnerable. And my worst stretches of my career are when it's been the opposite, when I've worked for people that are not approachable. And some of that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is that, as people that have, we have wounds, we have experiences that have created, who we are today. as leaders, we have needs as well. And to me, leadership isn't just leading down. It's being able to I hate the term managing up. I don't know why it bothers me so much, but having the vulnerability can, and I was explaining this to our great host here before the call started, was that it can burn you. You expose yourself by being vulnerable. I mean, that I think it's actually built into the definition of the word. But I'll tell you what, as somebody that I do look to the whys of what makes somebody who they are and how they got to where they are. And as an HR person, Nick, as you have to deal with people on a very emotional level, HR is the closest thing to a counselor that people are going to deal with in the workplace. And if you don't show the vulnerability as somebody that's helping somebody else, they're going to sense that, and they're not going to be fully transparent with you with what they're struggling with. I actually had a boss once knock me and say, "Hey, Vince, maybe you make yourself a little too available to these folks. They come to you too much." And I said, I never think it's too much. Does it get sometimes where the same person is struggling with the same thing over time that you've been trying to help them with? Can that get wearing? Yeah, it can. But if you lose track, and I've said this, if I ever get to the point where, as an HR person, I get tired of helping somebody, I need to be in a different career, because if your HR person isn't going to be approachable and vulnerable, then good luck finding somebody else in the organization that's going to do that. I'm not going to change. So I'm comfortable with how I approach people and how I let people approach me. And if that's seen as a sign of weakness, then I'm in the wrong organization.
As wearing as it is to be vulnerable, it's also wearing, Nick, I'm picturing you having these deeply emotional conversations and not being able to, like, having to detach. And that just feels like resistance to me. It feels like not being able to be yourself. To Vince's point, he's not going to change. He's going to be who he is. But when you have to come to work and you have to put that emotional, vulnerable piece aside, that does feel like resistance. And that resistance, number one, what we resist persists. If you're not able to process that emotion, energy in motion, that emotion, then it's going to manifest in other ways, potentially physical symptoms, potentially mental illness. It's you have to be able to connect with that emotion and process it. And if you're forced every day to go to work and compartmentalize the emotional part of your life, especially in a role like HR as a leader in general, then it's going to wear. There's going to be a tear somewhere, and how bad it's going to be is really dependent on how long you have to persist in that environment.
I agree.
And I just got something, y'all, as we're talking, right? Because this can become, birds of a feather. We're in a community together, and because we all know what right looks like, that we can have these conversations all day, right? What does it look like that you all have seen? How have you supported organizations beginning to implement this as okay? Right? We got tons of examples of people who break out in hives when anybody mentions being vulnerable. Or Nick, you just made people fall into the fetal position talking about make it okay for compassion and all the rest. Is like, you literally made people cuss at the screen. Like, that was one of those leader moments, like, you ain't allowed to be you here. Like, no, don't listen to him. But it's becoming a thing. It's becoming a thing for people to be whole. Go figure. Mm-hmm. Be whole at work. What are you all seeing as the catalyst to it taking it from this being aspirational to now we're beginning to build skill here? What are y'all seeing between Nick and Vince?
Well, you got to think too, this is something that is becoming a thing. But I would say that it's in its infancy. We are flying in the face of centuries, if not millennia, of what shows as being a good leader. A good leader is, when you look throughout history, is somebody that is hard, that is tough, that is, non-malleable in what they believe and what their mission is. And now we're moving into a place where a lot of the literature, a lot of the best practice that's being published out there is showing that if you don't have an empathetic arm of your leadership style, you're not going to connect with your people and you're not going to get the best out of them. Vulnerability and empathy to me go hand in hand. And if you're not going to allow that part of your personality or your being, not even your personality, to show to your people that you're leading, you're not going to be as effective. And I will tell you that I still see that old school approach in most of the people that I've witnessed leading. How do we get traction with this? We have to demand it as members of the community. We have to say, hey, look, I don't want to be led from this distant place where you just see me as somebody that's performing work to generate ROI, right? I'm a human being that needs connection and to feel like I'm a part of something bigger. And that doesn't happen through a paycheck. That doesn't happen through a benefits package, a 401k, right? That happens through having a meaningful relationship and a connection to the people that are leading you. So as an effective leader, you better start implementing this or you're probably going to get left behind.
I think, I think you're right on point, Vince. And another caveat that I think a lot of organizations start looking at, especially, and you all probably have had these conversations from an HR standpoint, but think about it. Organizations are looking at costs. And as you look at costs, some of the big costs that are manageable from a compensation and HR standpoint is health cost.
That's right.
A lot of health insurances, a lot of group health carriers are encouraging wellness, are encouraging mindfulness, are encouraging meditation, are encouraging all of these things so that your employees and your leaders show up well and healthy. We've got the Calm app. We've got all these different things that allow us to be whole, or certainly take a holistic approach to things. Well, the caveat to that is then what we also have to do is start to allow space for people to show up vulnerable, to show up their highest and best self, to show up in empathy. To Vince's point, it helps to build relationships. It helps to build influence. And instead of saying, manage up or lead up, Vince, I say 360 influence, 360 leadership. Well, the only way you're going to have that is that people need to connect.
That's right.
And connecting means that I got to be vulnerable to the process of truly understanding and knowing who I am so that I can build relationships, have healthy disagreements that fosters creativity, innovation, and the ability to lead effectively. If I can't build that through who I am, then I'm not effective at work. Also, we also got to remember, people don't leave jobs, they leave leaders.
That's right.
And so we got to have the approach. And if I'm leaving leaders, there's a whole lot of employee surveys out there that people do, exit interviews and all of those things. That data helps to drive vulnerability. What are we not doing as leaders? What could we do differently as leaders? And that pushes us past that old model that Vince was talking about into more of a holistic model that really does care about the whole self.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and it's got to be a two-way street too. You can be as vulnerable as you can be, but people have to be able to respond to that and not see it as something weird and something strange and new and scary, right? And I've seen some leaders try to be very open and in an organization that's very tight knit and conservative, and they look at that like, whoa, what is this new age? What is this person like? What are they doing? I'm not used to this. What are you're trying to treat me like a true
this
person?
What woo woo?
Right? Like what am I supposed to do with that? So there's a lot of work to be done. But it's got to start with the leaders. It always has to start with the leaders. I mean, that's why you see organizations that have a lot of turnover. Nick, you talk about this, and that have spiraling healthcare costs. They implement EAPs and they want people to use employee assistance programs and get help, but just dumping somebody into a resource like that without trying to connect with them yourself, it's a missed opportunity, right? Because now the connection and the vulnerability is going into a different direction where you can't build that connection to strengthen the organization, to strengthen your bond with that employee, to connect them to the organization, to feel like they're doing, that they're a part of something bigger. And to me, I've had people say, "Hey, I'll just tell them to call the EAP, and they'll be okay." And it's, well, I think that as a true leader, you need to do more than that. You need to do better.
I think I try to look at how things are today and why this change has all come about. And I look at several different major changes. Number one, when the leaders that our parents were reported to, back in the day, they might have had to put up with not having psychological safety, not being able to, bring their whole selves to work, not being able to show their emotions. But they also had something else that was financial security when they had a job. They had pensions. They had, the idea that they're going to be able to work there so long as they're performing, right? And sometimes even when they are not performing, they're going to be able to stay there, earn a salary, pay for the things that they need in life. And there was a relief of that. Now we have none of that. We have none of that financial security. So now people are suffering in all different realms of their lives, including financially. There is no the company's not going to be able to promise you or offer you that. Even the most stable of companies is not going to be able to tell you that you'll have a long-term opportunity there that's going to provide you with the financial security that you need. So it's like compounding stressors that people are not able to fully process and bring fully to work. And I also think that the mind-body connection discovery, Deepak Chopra, 1985, everything, that data, that was the impetus of the data. Wow, now we know that our emotional health and our physical health are connected. Let's see where this leads us. And it's definitely introduced, the data has introduced different things we need to try now, different things we need to do, and bold leaders who need to step up and say, I'm going to be willing to do this. But if you're in an environment, I think of you, Lawrence, in the military, and I think of you, Vince, with the juvenile youth, the youth who are, in a detention center, who probably grew up, believing that vulnerability was weakness, that it could literally mean your death. I feel like that, how do you be a leader in that space, knowing what you know now, and have learned, having had those mentors for yourself about how to demonstrate that. If you were to go back to the hall and take what you learned, how do you introduce vulnerability into an environment that can you? And Lauren, same with you with the military. How does vulnerability infiltrate these realms?
Well, if I were to go back in time to my time at the detention home, there's a lot that I wouldn't change, because I do believe that I approached those kids, in a way that I wanted them to see that they were better than that. They had potential that they weren't exploring. And I went into it, I thought, open-minded about the experience, about what they were experiencing at home, the pressures around them, the lack of guidance, and just a lot of the stuff, because I never looked at it as places like, these kids are, they messed up. They are, they're not salvageable. They are what they are. And because if you do that, and I saw a lot of that at this place, you shouldn't be doing this type of work, because kids are still fixable. Even adults are fixable. Like there are strides that we can take. And I'm 48 years old, and I feel like I'm improving every day myself. Right. And what I would tell these guys is, and something that I didn't tell them back then, is that life is short. Life is short, and you can't change what happened before. It's not about making amends necessarily. There's some things that we do in our lives that are not going to be fixable, right? There's words that are said that can't be taken back. There's things that we do that have set us on a path. What you need to do is make your next decision a better one. You have to decide what you want in your life, right? If it's just money, then it's not going to matter how you get the money, right? If it's true stability, well, there's a different way that you have to approach things if that's what you want, because living a life like a lot of these boys were living, these young men who had, I will tell you, if they were anywhere else in the world, they are the future leaders of the world. They have demonstrated at a young age how smart they are, how resourceful they are, how much they could bring to the world if they were channeled in a more positive way. It's about opportunity. It's about exposure to resources. I mean, we could talk about that topic forever, right? Forever. But what I would tell them is that, and I would do it even stronger than I did, is that I believed in them. After getting to know these young men, I believe in your ability to do whatever you want. And I wouldn't change the approach that I took to them, which was, it was probably too vulnerable. It was a group of kids that, I connected with. So I connected with most of them, but the message was like, you don't understand what I'm going through. Right. And I would do a better job of trying to bridge that gap and make more of a difference, because I think that there were some missed opportunities there.
Yeah. So one of the things that comes up for me is I always am baffled by the military leaders that I encountered throughout the years, that we actually had manuals around this stuff that were like total tactical, like gave you the keys to the city of how to do this well. And one in particular I got my hands on at the time was a field manual, leadership field manual that talked through the concept of be, know, and do. And and D is that's in the friend of the show, and dropping bombs in the chat, and also William is talking about make the next decision better, right? Don't ruminate on what happened, but use it as data points, right? And assess it and put things in context. And then one of the things that I did as a military leader, which at times caused conflict, and me and Vince had opportunity to talk through a little bit of this of, there are leaders in these environments who this is the way we've done it, or this is the way I've done it. And they turn that into their folklore and tribal wisdom. And one of the things that I've done to continue to help myself be relevant is don't become fixed, and continue to exercise and grow my understanding of what it really means of the seasonal growth mindset. Because let's be honest, when we get good at something, we want to repeat it. We want to add that to different things, right? It's usable data, right? I'm like, I got success there. I made money there. But along the way, if we don't partner with a community of people who we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with, we stop asking for feedback. And if that was the best way to do something, and then we also don't open ourselves up to actually engage in really relational conversations, where to me, that's where truths come out, is in those moments of, hey, I just don't on paper say we're equals or different things like that. Me and Nick can call me out. Karen, at this point, you can call me out and be like, Lawrence, you're not pulling your weight, bro. Like, you got to get your stuff together. Well, that wouldn't have happened unless a leader puts themselves in position to do their own work and to do their own deep work, which allows them to now become a practitioner in allowing others to do work, self-work, and have conversations there. And I really believe when you talk about leading with vulnerability, the reason why a lot of people don't have or don't show themselves that way, because they don't know what it looks like.
Right.
They don't know a model. They don't know a person. There's nobody a part of their community that has allowed themselves or given themselves permission to be vulnerable in context. Right. And there's with the coaching cohort, and one of the training, the coaches in the training, the concept of, and here's another one, Karen, that we may throw out there, contextual empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And making sure that we're having conversations in context.
Yes.
It's been a huge thing around vulnerability. And so it's not about just getting in your feels and being authentic and allowing myself to just burst out crying in a meeting. Like, whoa, time out. We was talking about ordering paper. Like, look, Vin's like, hit him 30 seconds.
20-second timeout.
Yeah. Like, let's keep it in context, because I think today that can be missed, right? Because we're in this world of extremes, and people are going to the left or to the right. Like, hey, what's the contextual middle? Let's have a conversation here to make sure we're all here for the right conversation, and that way we know how to move forward. We know how to communicate and engage with each other. And then the biggest thing that, and particularly around this of, if you show me your feels, I have to begin checking the judger in me so that I can stay present to make sure that I am who you need me to be in that moment for you.
As Bill was just saying, be in the moment.
Yeah, there you go. You got to be present. That is the one gift I've got from coaching in this topic. So I appreciate, Karen, you throwing this topic out to us and into the community. And I hope those in the C3 community are out there, because we're constantly trying to pull these other leaders in. And so, because me and Karen are givers, we don't want to hoard Vince or Nick. We want people to find you, contact you, and really have you a part of their organizations. But how can they find y'all? How can they connect with y'all? Because I love you. We would have y'all on every month.
Well, I'm fairly easy to find. I am on LinkedIn. So I believe I'm the only Vince Blando on there. So, but if you find another one that's smaller and more handsome than me, it's the wrong one.
Remember that Vince Blando we got invitations from
yes
from
I was
Facebook?
I got really excited because I'm getting old and dupable. There was a Vince Blando from the Philippines that anyway, long story short, if somebody with your name from the Philippines contacts you on Facebook, just don't engage. But yeah, I'm first of all, guys, I'm thrilled to have been able to be a part of this. This is stuff that I'm really passionate about and don't get to talk about very often. So if I did talk too much, it's because I love what you guys are doing. So thank you for including me, and it was great to meet you guys. Very excited.
I have one more big question, and I want to let Nick tell people where to find him too. But I think there's really a big landmine we haven't talked about around vulnerability, and when you become the target, and you have it, when you become you even whether you're demonstrating vulnerability or you're defending other people's right to be vulnerable in the workplace, and you put yourself at risk. Vince, I know you put yourself at risk for my vulnerability. I know you've done that for many other people, and potentially you're in transition right now because you were doing that. So you have personal experience. And
if it was easy, if it was easy, everybody would do it. If being vulnerable was easy, then, and I really believe that everybody would be, and the world would probably be a much better place. We'd have less conflict. We'd have more understanding for each other. In the workplace, I'd say it's magnified. You're right, Karen. I am currently in transition because my style of leadership and my style of performing the HR function it's not jiving with what leadership is looking for. They see HR in one way, and I see it as having a lot of other value. And you can be exposed, and you have to be comfortable with that, and you have to be strong enough in your beliefs and your convictions to go down that road, because it's not easy. You could probably do okay in your career, keeping your head down and being a yes person, and holding the line, and maybe you get yourself to retirement without a whole lot of hiccups. That's not for me. Would I love to have more stability in an organization that values vulnerability and leadership? Yes, I would, because being in transition is tough. It gets tougher the older you get. But me, Karen, and I want everybody to know this about me, is that I believe in this as truth. I believe in this as what's right, and to me, it is black and white in terms of how you should lead folks. And are there gray areas? We talk about being in the moment and being, contextual. Yes. But that's a case by case thing. I think your overall approach, though, needs to be this. Like, I'm dedicating myself to being this way. I'm going to be consistent. I'm not going to go back and forth with it, because that's the worst thing you can do, is to expose yourself as someone that's vulnerable and approachable, and then take that away from somebody. That's cruel, right? So I'm all
dramatic.
In. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I'm all in with it.
I love another thing Brene Brown says, which is we won't do empathy perfectly. We won't. No. So Nick, why don't you take the opportunity now? I'm sorry to interrupt your opportunity to tell people where to find you, but I that was on my mind as something I really wanted to address.
No,
amount of vulnerability.
You're okay. Yes. So you can find me either just looking up Nicholas Dillon, the Believe Coach. If you can type Believe Coach, Believe University, founder and CEO. Um, I'm open to anyone who wants to stay connected, who wants to reach out. I do a lot of leadership coaching and leadership work and a lot of culture work inside organizations. So when we talk about something like this and getting it started, this in order to have this work really good and be acceptable, it's a culture shift. And it starts inside the organization. And this is the work that I love. This is the work that is around my PhD work. And I'm excited to be a part of this conversation with you all. Um, Lawrence, I love you for life, so it's all good.
Thank you so much for bringing everything with you here today, Nick. I appreciate it. I look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Yes.
I want everybody to be able to understand what the opportunities in C3 are. Vince, I believe you're probably just going to hand that to me to do, if I know you by now. So I just actually this week released 15 ways that you can leverage the C3 community. So whether you're in C3 and haven't felt like you've gotten anything from that, I mean, first of all, attend these, right? I mean, I feel like these are the golden nugget of our group. But there's so many other opportunities. Thank you, Dee. Thanks for coming again today. Thank you, Bill, for coming and contributing. I mean, definitely take a look at that list and say, what are some missed opportunities here of how I can take this community and either leverage it for your career or to further consciousness. I know that there are 122 people in the group right now, and I only know 77 of them. So I've got my own work to do and getting to know some of the people in the community that I haven't been introduced yet to. But please take a look at that. It's not long, just 15 things. You can scroll through them, or there's a little paragraph there to kind of give you some more guidance around that. Lawrence and I, every other Tuesday, including this coming Tuesday, are going to be on Clubhouse at 1:15. We're going to be talking about a very exciting event that we are planning for June, a telesummit. And we are looking forward to engaging the C3 community, both as speakers and attendees for that. We're also, I just started yesterday. I used to do Twitter chats, and I'm like, I wonder if they still work. I wonder if you can still do a Twitch chat. So I did one. It didn't have a lot of engagement live, but it had some after the fact. So I'm going to try it again next Wednesday. That's Wednesday at 11 a.m. I'm going to do another Twitter chat. So you can follow me at Epic Careering on Twitter and engage with me there. Just talk about, all these different ways that we can elevate these practices. That's what the C3 community was built for, and what it's continuing to do in a grander scale. And I'm very excited about what's to come in the members of this community.
Yeah, I love it. So, and I am equally as blessed and fortunate to be at these conversations each month that we do them. But please avail yourself to if you're an iPhone user at this point in beta, come hang out with us in Clubhouse, because I believe that's going to be an enormously powerful platform just to continue to have these conversations. And it takes away the pressure of having to put clothes on because it's all audio. So you can just jump in, rolling out of bed or wherever you're at in the world. You can just start talking and having a conversation. But thank y'all once again, Nick and Vince, for coming to hang out with me and Karen, and sharing your expertise as practitioners, as action gentlemen in the world that you're in. And Vince, y'all engage with Vince. You have a leader who actually has a heartbeat, who is desiring to help the culture of your organization do things differently. And I absolutely love it. And William said, hey, can you post a link for the Clubhouse, please?
Bill, I'll definitely get that to you. I'll get that to you.
So we're rocking and rolling. So until next time, folks, continue. We do this the first Thursday at the top of the month. And I love D just threw in there. Great resource. Clubhouse is a way to get out of the echo chambers. So if you want to find some good content, some good convo, that's where we'll be. So until next time, folks, continue to be safe, continue to be well, and you know where to find us. Jump into the C3 community and engage, and we'll talk then. All right, until next time, folks. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.